Professor Richard Wolff drops by to explain the difference between deflation and inflation and the relationship between deflation and depressions. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Excuse me, Professor Richard Wolff, the professor of economics, the author of numerous books, including most recently Understanding Socialism. He's the co-founder of what do you call it? democracyatwork.info. There we go. And his website, rdwolff with 2fs.com as well. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff, P-R-O-F-W-O-L-F-F. Dr. Wolff, welcome back. I wanted to ask you about deflation. I don't think probably anybody alive outside of maybe a nursing home actually remembers the last time America experienced a consequential and long-lasting deflation. And the price of oil right now causes me to be concerned that we may be moving toward a deflationary environment. What is deflation, and what's its relationship with depressions as opposed to recessions?
Okay, first of all, simply a deflation, think of it as the opposite of an inflation. In other words, it is a situation in which there's a general decline in prices. Think of it as prices of goods and services that you buy in a store going down, usually together with wages and salaries also going down. When you have a general decline like that, it is the opposite of an inflation, and we call that a deflation. It has happened in history many times. Sometimes it's slow and lasts for several years. You barely notice it. It's a % or 2 or 3 per year that prices kind of inch down. And sometimes it's catastrophic. In modern times, the one that most people point to in the 1920s in Germany, just to give you an example, my grandparents and my mother's parents were German, lived in Berlin at the time, and I was told stories that my grandfather would run home from the store where he worked at midday for his lunch break, never eat at the store as he had once done, because he ran home with a paper bag full of money, which he handed off a bit like a relay runner to my grandma, who then ran with it to the store to buy groceries, because if they hadn't done that, if they had waited until the evening when he was done with his workday, that money would have lost so much value because the prices would have tripled or quadrupled in the afternoon. So you can see
that
was sometimes
inflation.
That's an inflation, that's right. It's the opposite of the deflation, but there are occasions when you have had a collapse of prices. Even during the 1930s, when wages and salaries went down, there was also a general fall in prices here in the United States, which kind of softened the burden on people who either had lost their job or had to take lower wages because they were able to get away with paying lower prices for goods. There's no necessity that a depression goes together with a deflation. It can be if what happens, and here's the logic of it, if people are depressed because they've lost their job, the way it's happening right now, and have no income, the way it's happening right now, and they go to the store and the storekeeper sees that nobody in the village or in the town or in the city has enough money, the storekeepers can become desperate that they're never going to move the stuff off the shelf. And so in order to keep business going, they begin to drop prices. And then you have this kind of back and forth between falling prices and falling wages kind of causing each other. That could happen. It's not a necessity. Particularly if the Federal Reserve and the government keep pumping vast amounts of new money, then that's a little bit less likely to happen than might otherwise have been the case.
So, that's interesting. I had always believed that when deflation got really substantial, that part of it was that money was much less available, that there was an association with the availability of credit, there was an association with the availability of money in general. The money supply had contracted, and that was related to the deflation. I mean, is that the case? And
It could. It doesn't have to be.
Was that the case in the 1930s in the United States, and might we be looking at something like that in the United States now? Or in other words, is oil the outlier here, or is oil the leading indicator?
You never know until it sort of plays itself out. At this point, oil would have to be considered the outlier because you haven't seen anything like that quite happening before. But oil is not the only thing going down in prices. Over the last month or so, even though it's up and down, the general situation of stocks, for example, they're lower priced than they were, say, 2 months ago. So the trend is down there, too. The government is desperately trying to reverse that, just like they're trying to reverse the thing with oil. They're terribly afraid that a deflation would set off a kind of a cycle, a spiral of people cutting prices as they see the prices falling around them. Competitors can get desperate. If you're the first one to lower the price and the few people that can afford things therefore run to you, then your competitor will have to competitively drop her prices as well. These things can get underway, and with a boost like a drop in the price of oil, you can see, just for example, the alternatives to oil, wherever they exist, they are now in trouble because everybody who could buy oil at a ridiculously low price is going to shift from gas or coal or whatever else they were using to oil, and that's going to be an incentive for these other producers to start lowering their prices. And then when the manufacturers or storekeepers lower their prices, the next step is to put tremendous pressure on their workers, on their labor unions, telling them, look, we can't get the price we used to, so we're not going to be able to pay your wages the way we used to. And then you get what's called a wage price spiral, which can go down just like it can go up.
Right. My dad, who was a child during the Great Depression, once told me that, in his opinion, the main thing that was driving deflation during the Depression was the fact that unemployment was so widespread that employers just kept cutting wages because there were always people willing to work for less. Is that something that we might see here now that we're approaching 20% unemployment in the United States? Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're going to see that happen. And the only question, it's always a question of countervailing or counterbalancing forces. You're going to see wages be cut. You're going to have people threatening to work for less and taking the job of the next man or woman down the line by offering to work for less. You're going to see employers who are in tough shape wanting to take advantage of that, feeling once they can pay a worker less, maybe then they can get a jump on their competitor by lowering the price of whatever they have to sell, since it won't hurt so much, since they're getting away with paying lower wages. You can get into a wage price spiral downward just as easily from a lower wage as you could from a lower oil price or anything else. And it terrifies people because, for example, if you have a deflation when all prices and wages go down, here's something that doesn't go down: your dollar debt. The real cost to you of the debts you have to pay become even higher if all of the money transactions, your wages and the prices you pay, go down. The one thing that doesn't is the $800,000 house that you have a mortgage that you have to keep paying, because those don't get adjusted. You begin to have real displacements within the economy.
Right. So the people who are cash rich, the billionaires, they make out really well during that time. People who are in debt get screwed.
That's right. The minute the prices fall, the people with the money buy literally everything.